Hi guys, it's Miss Simon. So I wanted to make this video today to help you guys out with science. So remember yesterday we started talking about force, and force is simply just a push or a pull, okay? And remember we talked about that there's two categories of forces. We have contact forces and we have distant forces. And remember contact forces, it's really simple. If it's a contact force, it's in contact with something, meaning something is touching something else, causing force to happen. And the other type was distant forces. Remember, distant forces, the objects are not touching and a force is happening. So today what we are going to do is we're going to take a closer look at those three types of contact forces that we were introduced to yesterday. Okay, remember the three types of contact forces that we kind of went through. We had applied force, friction force, and normal force. So today we're going to kind of go through and look a little deeper at what each one of those means. So make sure you have your notes. If I highlight it, make sure you're putting it down in your notebook. All right, so the first type of contact force we're going to talk about today is applied force. Okay, so go ahead in your notes, please. Applied force. So applied force is a contact force exerted on an object either by a person or another object. So it's a contact force exerted on an object either by a person or another object. So for example, in this picture, we see this man pushing the car. The man is applying the push to the car. He's coming into contact with the car, pushing it, causing it to move forward. So the person pushing the car along the road is applying the force upon the car. So by him pushing it, he's applying that force to the car. So we call that an applied force. What's an example of applied force that involves pulling? What's one that you can think of, an applied force that's going to involve pulling? You said something along the lines of, say, pulling in tug of war. If you're playing a game of tug of war, pulling the rope, that's going to be an applied force. You pulling the rope, you're applying a force to the rope. So again, applied force is contact force exerted on an object either by a person or another object. Now, when you're applying this force by a push or a pull, you make it move, you're causing the motion. So you applying the force is causing that object to move. Obviously, the harder you push or the harder you pull on something, the more you change its motion, okay? Go ahead and write this down, please. The harder you push or pull on something while it's moving, the more you change its motion. So obviously, if we look at this picture here, we see that this person is pulling the box, okay? So the harder he pulls this box, the more it is going to move, okay? So ultimately, more force is going to lead to more change in speed. So the harder you're pushing or pulling in something, the more its speed is going to change because its motion is changing. All right, moving on. Now, counteracting motion. So just as applying a force to an object causes it to move in a certain direction, okay, applying force to a moving object can counteract the motion, causing it to stop. So for example, imagine a ball rolling towards you. When it gets to you, you can push the ball away from you and slow it down. So when someone's passing you, say a soccer ball or something, they're applying a force to kick the soccer ball, and then the soccer ball is going forward. Okay, but you on the other side, you can cause the ball to slow down by stopping it or by counteracting a motion. If you kick it the other direction, it's going to go the other way. So for example, if you're pushing hard enough, you can actually stop the ball, and that's what we call counteracting motion. So go ahead and put this down, please. Just as applying a force to an object can cause it to move, applying the force to a moving object can counteract the motion, causing it to stop. All right, moving on. So, for example, something we call limited motion. So, if you're kicking a soccer ball, it's not going to travel forever. Okay. If we kick a soccer ball, eventually it is going to stop. What's pushing back on the ball to make it stop? So, think about it. If you are in the grass and you're kicking a soccer ball and nobody's around it, when you kick it, it eventually stops. So, what is causing that soccer ball to eventually stop? What's pushing back on it that's going to make it stop? You said the grass, okay, or the ground, okay, you would be correct. And this is what we call friction. So the ball stopping due to a force called friction. Friction is the force from two surfaces rubbing against each other. Friction is always present when two objects rub against each other. So go ahead and put that down, please. Friction is the force from two surfaces rubbing against each other. Friction is always present when two objects rub against each other. So what's causing that ball to actually slow down is a force we call friction. And that friction is coming from the ball and the grass coming in contact with one another. So again, friction is the force from two surfaces rubbing against each other. And anytime any two objects are rubbing against each other, friction is always going to be present. So if we look at this example of the ball and the grass, the two objects that are rubbing against each other are the ball and the grass. That's causing that friction. And what ultimately causes the ball to stop moving. Now, friction force always acts against the object's motion. It always tries to slow things down, okay? The amount of friction depends on the texture of the surfaces. Rougher surfaces have more friction. So if we look for an example, we see a hockey puck here, okay? Obviously, if we're comparing kicking a soccer ball on a grass field to shooting a hockey puck across ice, okay, a hockey puck is going to go a longer distance before it stops. Okay, but if you were to take that hockey puck and put it on the sidewalk instead of ice, it's going to go less of a distance. Okay, so the amount of friction depends on the surface that it's rubbing against. So go ahead and write this down, please. The amount of friction depends on the texture of the surfaces. Rougher surfaces have more friction. So rougher surfaces like sidewalks and like grass are going to cause that ball and that hockey puck to stop a lot quicker. So it really has nothing to do with the ball or nothing to do with the hockey puck. It's actually the surface that it is being played or kicked on. So rougher surfaces are going to have more friction. And because there's more friction, those objects are going to stop moving sooner. All right, moving on. The last type of contact force we're going to talk about today is something we call normal force. Okay, normal force is the support force a stable object exerts on another object. Okay, so go ahead and put this down. Normal force. Normal force is the support force a stable object exerts on another object. So basically what this means is if we look around, we can see normal forces happening all around us. Okay, so this a book sitting on your desk. The book is going to be, the weight of the book is pushing down on the desk, and the weight of the desk is pushing up on the book. Okay, so two stable objects creating just a normal force. So when a book is sitting on a table, it exerts its force down on the table. The surface of the table is exerting force upwards to support the weight of the book. So it doesn't look like really, we can't really see force again because force we can't see it or touch it, all right? But it's happening kind of all around us. Any objects that are sitting on tables, it's going to be an example of a normal force. You sitting in your chair, you're exerting force down on your chair. Your chair is supporting your weight upwards, so you have a normal force. So again, normal force is the support force a stable object exerts on another object. All right, let's go over some questions. Friction force involves two surfaces rubbing against each other, a force applied to an object by a stationary object, movement caused by applied force, or objects do not contact each other. Talking about friction. So you just should have said A, two surfaces rubbing against each other. Which of the following is not an example of an applied force? Remember, an applied force, you're applying a force to something. Kicking a football, typing on a keyboard, pulling a wagon, or sitting on the couch. Which of those is not an example of an applied force? If you said sitting on a couch, you are correct. Sitting on a couch would be an example of a normal force. You sitting on the couch, your bottom is applying weight on the couch. Your couch is applying a force upward to support your weight. You're not doing anything for that force to happen. You're just sitting there. So that's normal force. Normal force occurs when a moving object applies force to a stationary object, a force is applied to an object causing it to move, a stable object exerts supporting force on another object, or two surfaces rub against each other. You said a stable object exerts supporting force on another object. C, you are correct. All right, so that is where we're going to stop for today. So remember, guys, today we kind of focused on those contact forces. Applied force is when you're actually applying a force to something else. Friction force is those two surfaces rubbing against each other. And finally, normal force is when a stationary object is exerting a force onto something. Okay, so for example, a book sitting on a counter. The book is pushing downward, the counter is pushing upward, and you just have a normal force happening. So I hope this video is helpful, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.